Good morning, neighbors. I started this off thinking about checks and balances, how to present that. When most people hear that, they probably think of their checkbook or their bank account. Checks and balances. But that is one of these concept things. It's useful everywhere. We have checks and balances put into your everyday life. One of the checks or the balances, how much money do you have to spend? That kind of checks your spending habits, maybe, unless you've got too much credit and abuse it. So this idea of checks and balances, huge. We call them accountants. We call them auditors. We call them police of some sort. Not police in the bad way. Police is in people doing policing, like a health inspector is policing for the health of the general community around them, right? A bad restaurant can spoil a neighborhood. So, where did I go on checks and balances? Somehow I went to our national laboratories, right? Who would go there in conversation? So, our national laboratories, we fund to the tune of about $10 billion a year. Now, there's major labs, and those labs partner with other labs, because this is how science works. Science is a collaboration across time and space. Unlike many other sedentary things, science is just continuously learning. That's what it does. That's kind of its point. So these national laboratories, by name, that $10 billion is only spent. These are all DOE labs, which is an interesting circumstance because the CDC has labs that they use in the medical field and medical profession. So somehow these labs got classified as national laboratories, and yet the others are checks and balances. Who's checking the balances? $10 billion a year. Now, these national labs have been infested with privatization. What privatization does is it lowers the salaries, paychecks, and benefits of everyone involved, and what is skimmed off the top of the contract goes to, let's call it Wall Street for conversation's sake. Now, this is real life experience. This is not conjecture on how we got to where we are. But these national labs, $10 billion a year just for energy research and associated activities. Somewhere there's a new study initiated about actinides and lanthanides, very interesting materials, very isotope dependent, what those lanthanides and actinides are. Many of them, not all of them, some of them are, well, national laboratories. So what do they do? Again, materials research I just mentioned, actinides and lanthanides and their interactions with other things in time and space. Because people do this research. These are the checks and the balances or unbalances or where they are. So these national laboratories are important to us. People should be striving for jobs at those labs, those major institutions that guide the energy policy towards our future, right? National laboratories run by the Department of Energy. Parallel to that, another user of these laboratory things are DARPA projects, separate funded entities, separate realm of research typically, still related. They're cousins in time and space. DARPA would have funded the electronics, the computers, that type of technology surrounding what the DOE labs are doing maybe. Big conversation within these labs, within science and debate itself about data retention and how much we can keep. Another video. So these federal labs also have a consortium with other labs. These are colleges, universities, private labs, corporate labs. That's a key word there, corporate labs, like Exxon Production Research, a lab that still exists. The Federal Laboratory Consortium includes more than 100 labs and facilities in the following 14 states. Checks and balances. Oddly, these states tend to be red states. This is very telling. A little piece of the history of these national labs doing energy research for oil, gas, nuclear materials, fusion, fission, chemical reactions, Department of Energy. The minerals, the natural resources that these things need and talk about and require are not run by the Department of Energy. That's the Department of the Interior, typically, and mining operations, raw materials, fundamental building blocks of your cell phone you're probably looking at now. Checks and balances. You have to even know and understand these labs. $10 billion. So the few states that they're in have got a lot of money flowing through them. And yet these are some of the poorest educated states. Some of them are very highly religious states with nuclear labs in their midst. There's some irony in this conversation. Decades ago, we were promised bright education for the future from nuclear power. We were promised near free energy from nuclear power. Hasn't worked out that way, has it? So, how things work. A little piece of national labs and checks and balances.